left the window open, if she really wanted to reach you, she'd be able to find you.
She would be able to find me.
So now question, when you left town, did you know she was pregnant?
I had no idea at all whatsoever. She never told me she was pregnant.
Were you sleeping around at that time?
No, Your Honor,
Of course he gonna tell you that. Wow.
I don't believe.
But a girl just never popped up pregnant, but I'm a hoe because I popped up pregnant. Wow.
If she wanted to go out and kick it or whatever it is she wanted to do, she was allowed to do it.
So it was a sexual relationship with no expectation of commitment.
Pretty much.
Dive with me into the world dilemma between couples and ex-fiancés, but in this case, we would settle with the ex-fiancée. I hope you guys are ready for some crazy situations in paternity court that I promise you will definitely never forget. Now, Mr. Page was quite furious in that courtroom. Trust me, he was willing to bring down the roof on everyone if he was given the chance. His ex-fiancée cheated on him, took his son to another state, and decided to get married to the man she cheated on him with. Well, guess what? His ex-fiancée wasn't denying any of it at all.
Mr. Page, you claim your ex-fiancée and the mother of your 3-year-old son cheated on you and then took your son to another state to marry the man she cheated with. Now you say Miss Sutton also has a 2-year-old daughter whom she claims is yours, even though her husband has been raising her as his own. You have petitioned the court for a DNA test to determine whether or not the child in question is in fact.
Now, Mr. Page is asked to talk about why he and his ex-fiancée split in the first place. The sentence that drops from his mouth would make you understand the intensity of his frustration. You would never believe what happened. Those were the exact words that jumped out of his mouth. Would you imagine that? Looks like we are in for one hell of a paternity case. Trust me. From there, the fight erupts and Mr. Page and his ex-fiancée. And believe me, when I tell you, it was very hard to believe these two were ever in love at some point in time.
You would never believe what happened. My ex-fiancée, Alicia, cheated on me and moved to another state with my son. And then...
So wait, back up for a second, Mr. Page.
Can I start?
You're together.
we was together, Your Honor.
You're engaged.
Yes, Your Honor.
And then you found out she was cheating.
Yes.
Tell
she
me
started
about
like this.
this.
She said her girlfriend have a question for me. And I said, what kind of question? She said she cheated on a man.
To make things worse, Ms. Satoon, who happened to be the ex-fiancée in the picture, wasn't denying any of the claims. It was almost as if she was beating her chest and claiming that she wasn't sorry for doing it. Well, I'm sure you can understand where Mr. Page's anger and frustration are coming from. If I were in his shoes, I'd most definitely feel the same way. Now the big question is how they both got themselves into such a messy situation. Ms. Sutton had her own side of the story to tell, and it sure seemed like Mr. Page was no saint either.
Yeah, I was a cheater, but let's start from the beginning.
Let me hear from you from the beginning, Ms. Sutton.
First of all, we have a 3-year-old son, and yes, he was there at the birth of my son. But the reason why I cheated, because you was never home. You want to do what you want to do, smoking, drinking. If I'm hearing you out doing all these things, why I can't go do? Y'all can take that picture down, because that's not a happy family no more.
Oh, she had quite a lot to say about Mr. Page's behavior, trust me. She claimed that she was getting information from people that suggested that Mr. Page was doing some funny business with women while he claimed to be out working. What was even more mind-blowing about where she got the information was that she got the news from Mr. Page's friends. Now that's very wild. From his friends? Oh, trust me, I have so many questions.
Is my homeboy or whatever, but I don't like the way what he doing. He's in other girls' face and all that stuff. I said, okay, you can be in other females' face, but what is he doing with these females? Oh, you don't even want me to tell you.
That's
how they go. You don't even want me to tell you. If your homeboy is saying you don't even want me to tell, that means you sleeping with her. You sitting up here acting like I was such a hoe and I cheated.
And you confronted him about this?
She never confronted me with that, Your Honor.
These two couldn't stand each other one bit. If they were left alone, I'm pretty sure a big-ass fight would have gone down. In Mr. Page's defense, he claimed he was an unhappy person in their relationship, and most times, when he was sad, he would go out to drink his sorrows away. Well, I did tell you they didn't look like they were in love, but Ms. Sutton was hell-bent on believing that any time he went out, he always went to sleep with someone else.
So now I just...
Okay, so they give you a reason to cheat. If you unhappy?
I went out and drank late night. I went out and drank with my son.
So you were out hanging out,
yes,
and you were drinking, but you weren't cheating.
Yes,
now,
never cheated.
Miss Sutton, when you heard was that he was out sleeping around.
I didn't believe it at first, because I want to find out on my own. I'm not just
so what did you
no
do?
Females. Okay, I waited it out.
Okay.
I waited it out, and we kept building the relationship. We both knew we wasn't unhappy.
Here's where things start to get really intense. Mr. Page was already having his suspicions that Ms. Sutton had been messing around with someone new. He wasn't sure who it was, so he decided to find out. Trust me, his detective detective instincts were pretty good because he found the man who she had been sleeping with. Now here's where his heart shatters into a million pieces. He calls Mr. Cooper, who happens to be the new guy in the mix, and asks if he and Ms. Sutton have been messing about. Well, I'm sure you know the answer to that question now, don't you?
This is Pierre. You don't know who I am. I'm calling you for a reason. My fiance Alicia Sutton, he started saying right there, he said, I'm sorry. That should never happen. I said, did you sleep with Alicia? He said, yes, I did.
Okay.
At that time, my one tear dropped in my eye.
Just one.
One tear
Oh,
just
my
dropped.
God.
I promise you.
This case was taking a spin for the worst. All you could feel for Mr. Page was sadness because Ms. Sutton really did him dirty. Moving on, Mr. Cooper wasn't just her new man. Oh, trust me, he was way more than that. They were married. Now he walks into the courtroom and he wasn't going to beat around the bush. He stood on the claim saying he was 100% sure the baby in question belonged to him. Couldn't things get any worse?
Plain and simple, the last 2 years, I've taken care of this baby. I've done everything I could. She's mine. I feel it in my heart that she's mine. Despite what happened between Alicia and I and her ex-fiance, I accept that. I'm sorry for that. But when Alicia told me she was pregnant, I was excited,
No, you was not excited. Because when
Yes, he was excited.
When I told you, you told me that this child is not yours. Yes,
The stakes were high for both Mr. Page and Ms. Sutton. On one side, Mr. Page was desperately hoping the baby was going to be his. On the other hand, Ms. Sutton was hoping the baby belonged to her husband so she could save her marriage. Well, let's see who goes home with butterflies in their stomach.
Mr. Page, you are her father. No emotion. What are you feeling?
I always want a precious daughter. That's my first daughter in the family. And I'm going to love her and raise her.
Mr. Cooper, I see you feeling very emotional. I know this wasn't the news you wanted.
she's still mine.
Over my dead body. That's my daughter.
Now,
Talk about a church scandal. This is one epic church scandal that I promise you will never forget. It's not every day you get to see a bishop be accused of getting one of his church members pregnant. Well, this happened to be one of those situations, and trust me, it was pretty intense. Mr. House was in that courtroom to defend his name as he was being accused of fathering a child of a woman who was 28 years younger than him. Trust me, it was one hell of a case.
Who may have fathered a child with a woman who's 28 years younger than you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, Ms. Webster, you admit you were involved with 3 different men during the time you conceived your daughter, including Mr. House.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, the second possible father you've identified, Mr. Miles Jones, is 9 years older than you, and he's currently waiting outside of the courtroom.
It was really hard to believe that Mr. House was actually a pastor. Ms. Webster, who happened to be the mother in question, was a member of his church, and she had 3 possible men who could be the father to her child. Now, could you imagine that? Now, the big question was how the pastor ended up being a potential father to one of his members. I really want to find out.
That I'm a man and I have manly needs. So it doesn't mean that I won't see a woman, but I'm also a pastor. I met her. We began to talk and enjoy each other. I liked her company. We shared some tragedies together. She went through a tragedy. She lost her mom. I went through tragedy. I lost my child. And it just kind of brought a connection. There was a connection. I thought she was hot.
Well, their funny little story started from a Bible study session. Oh, trust me, this was no ordinary Bible session, all right? As Ms. Webster talked about how they met, she said she thought she was going to have a normal Bible session, but it ended in both her and Mr. House having unprotected sex. Well, I sure didn't see that coming. I'm as curious as you are. Trust me, because how on earth does something like this even happen?
We met through my aunt. We met at a church. It was supposed to have been like a Bible study thing, but instead of that, it was like more, it led on to sexual, unprotected sex instead.
I didn't meet her at a church. I met her at a fast food joint, and we exchanged the numbers.
That's wrong, Your Honor. We met at church.
Looked at each other, and quickly she became a hoochie, and that's what it was all about.
Excuse me, Bishop House, is that proper language to use for a young woman?
They couldn't get their stories to align, and trust me, it wasn't surprising at all. Ms. Webster was claiming that they met in church and things became sexual during one of their sessions. Mr. House, on the other hand, said they met at a food stand and she was the one who wanted a sexual relationship with him. If I had to choose, I'd definitely side with Ms. Webster because this pastor definitely has some skeletons in his closet and he doesn't want to let anyone see them. At least they both agreed on one thing, and that was the fact it was just a sexual relationship.
She's saying you all were at church, but regardless, you decided to be in a sexual relationship. Was it more than a sexual relationship?
No,
or
it was just a hookup.
It was
just a hookup?
It was a booty call.
And you agreed with that it was just...
Not only with me, with 3 other people
It
as
was
well.
just a sexual
just a
relationship.
sexual relationship.
Casual, no commitment.
No commitment.
So, Ms. Webster...
Ms. Webster drops a truth bomb in the courtroom that leaves everyone speechless. While she was fooling around with our sleek pastor in her Bible sessions, she had a boyfriend. In her defense, she claimed her relationship was on and off, which which eventually resulted in her having a sexual relationship with Mr. House. Well, I'm honestly not surprised. I mean, 3 men could be the possible fathers to her child. So trust me, it's really not that much of a surprise.
Mr. Miles Jones.
Mr. Miles Jones. Now, who is he? How did you meet him? Was this a boyfriend? What was?
Yes, he was a boyfriend. We knew each other for 5 years, but it was an on and off relationship.
I knew nothing about that, Your Honor, at all whatsoever.
And so you knew Mr. Miles Jones before you ever met Mr. House?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, who happens to be the boyfriend in the picture, walks into the courtroom. Oh, trust me, you could see it in his eyes that Ms. Webster had broken his heart. Looks like Ms. Webster was one hell of a mischievous woman. Her relationship with Mr. Jones didn't particularly start as a romantic one. Yup, you heard that right. It began as a sexual one before they both started to have feelings for each other. Wow.
At first, it started off as casual sex for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then I started catching feelings. She told me that she started catching feelings also, so we made a serious relationship.
So you decided to make it serious?
Yes.
But at some point, she started sleeping with Mr. House. Did you know that? You knew?
No, I had no idea.
And so, Ms. Webster, you seem like you the only person in the know.
Now, Ms. Webster finds out she's pregnant. Of course, she doesn't tell her boyfriend because he has no idea she was intimate with her pastor. Now she picks up her phone to tell Ms. House that she's pregnant, and there's a high chance the baby might be his. But guess what? He is nowhere to be found. It's as if as soon as he finds out she's pregnant, he disappears from the surface of the earth.
When I found out I was pregnant, I was trying to contact Mr. House. His phone was disconnected. First, I never knew he left town. And then I didn't even get in contact to tell him until after I had my baby, which he denied her to the Phyllis. He denied her. He wanted a DNA test. He didn't want nothing to do with my baby.
That's not true.
The courtroom was going up in flames with the way these guys were yelling at each other. Mr. House had some doubts about the paternity of the baby, and that was because she was intimate with a couple of other men that weren't him. But hold up, that was the craziest part. She waited 6 months before she broke the news to him that she was pregnant, and there was a possibility he could be the father of her child. I did tell you it was a case you would never forget.
And then she said to me, I'm pregnant. I said, really? I said, how long? She was like, I'm about 5 to 6 months. I said, so trying to tell me that it's mine? She said
5 to 6 months before you told him?
Well, I was
So you
4
can
to 5
imagine, I didn't know it all.
So when you told him, I'm pregnant, did you then tell him, and you're the father?
No, I told him it's a possibility that he can be my baby's father.
So you can understand now why I have serious doubt.
Well, the suspense is finally over, and the hassle of who the dad of their child is about to be revealed. It's been a bumpy and funny ride with Mr. Morris and Ms. Thorpe. All eyes on the judge as she unleashes the truth. Get ready, paternity folks.
Mr. House, it has been determined by this court you are not her father.
Your Honor, I just feel that a great injustice is done. I not know who you're sleeping with and accuse people. I just think it's wrong, and I think an apology is definitely due.
Get ready to get your minds blown because this case will definitely do justice to that. Now Ms. White had no donut about who the father of her child was. She was so certain that even the Holy Spirit couldn't change her mind. Trust me, that's how much certainty she had. But there was a catch, and trust me, it was a wild one. She admitted she was intimate with the ice cream man in her neighborhood. I bet you weren't expecting that. Mr. Flowers, on the other hand, was in full denial mode, as he had no reason to believe the child was his.
Ms. White, you say you have no doubt when it comes to who your 4-month-old child Major's biological father is, even though you were intimate with the neighborhood ice cream man during the window of conception. You are seeking a DNA test as well as $1,846.54 in child care expenses, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Flowers, you say you have no reason to believe.
As if claiming he was the father if her child wasn't enough. She was also suing him for child support. Oh, trust me, she brought her a game to that courtroom and there was no shaking her. Apparently, she was upset that she had been the only one taking care of the child since birth and Mr. Flowers in no way assisted her. This then begs the question, why does he have doubts that he is the father of the child? What's the story behind all that?
I bought everything for my son that he needs as an infant. He hasn't bought anything. The things he did buy, he took back to the store.
What do you mean?
He bought him 2 outfits and he returned them pretty much.
Mr. Flowers, you took the outfits back?
Yes, ma'am. He couldn't fit them, and he probably would have took about 3 months for him to be able to fit the clothes.
Well, you know we buy the baby stuff a little bit big so they have room to grow.
It was only right that Judge Lauren asked her why she was so certain that the baby belonged to Mr. Flowers. Believe me when I tell you her answer would leave you in shock. She said she was very confident that he was the father of the baby because all they did when they were together was have sex. At least one thing is clear though, these two never loved each other. That definitely clears the air about what type of relationship they had, would you say?
Me and Mr. Flowers, that's all we did was have sex. You know, that was our relationship was based on sex, unprotected sex at that. So.
And you were having sex with Mr. Flowers during the window of conception.
Yes.
And you weren't using protection.
No, ma'am.
Mr. Flowers, you say you have doubt.
Yes, ma'am.
And why is that?
I ain't putting no leash and collar on nobody's neck. We was doing what we do.
Now let's dive right into the sea of the drama in this case. Apparently, Mr. Flowers wasn't the only man she was intimate with. There was another man in the mix. So one night, while Ms. White fell asleep in Mr. Flowers' home, he picked up her phone to see who she had been texting. Lo and behold, he found what he was looking for, all right? Ms. White wasn't just texting another, but also sending him very kinky pictures. I mean, they weren't dating, so there's no harm in that, right?
Ms. White, we was kicking it, and I had spent the night over there. She filed asleep, text message come through. And man, I don't even know where to begin at, Judge. It get real explicit
and that's only
and
because
everything.
he wasn't around. He wasn't around.
I never said nothing to her neither, because I ain't the argumentative, fighting type of guy. I find out what it is, keep my grass cut now.
And there was no way the judge wasn't going to listen to the other man in question. I mean, it's a courtroom. Every side of the story has to be told. Mr. Miles, who happens to be the other baby daddy in question, walks into the courtroom. You could see the look on his face that he definitely didn't want to be in that courtroom. But guess what? He had no choice.
Yes.
Was it ongoing? Was this just a one-night thing?
Actually, we only did it like 4 times.
So you just went out about 4 times. So this wasn't a relationship. It wasn't a committed relationship.
No.
Did you use protection?
I used protection at 3 times, but the last time I didn't.
Right. So therefore you understand that there's a possibility that you could be this child's father?
Possible.
A possibility. Ms. White, how did you see the nature of the relationship with Mr. Miles?
Boom, an argument erupts between Ms. White and Mr. Miles. Apparently, she wasn't telling the whole truth according to Mr. Miles. When she was asked if she told just Mr. Flowers that he was the only father, she said yes. Well, guess what? That wasn't the whole truth. She also told Mr. Miles that he was the father of the child. Something definitely doesn't add up with Ms. White's story. Can she come clean already?
Did you ever tell Mr. Miles he was the father too?
No.
Mr. Miles?
No, I really didn't. I really did
not.
not.
What did she tell you, Mr. Miles?
She had called me. We talked a little bit, and then she come talking about, yes, possibly that Major could be your child.
So she told you?
Yeah, she told me that. And then I had told her, because really, actually, Your Honor, I got 8 kids, okay? All my kids look just like me, or they got some type of feature.
Another truth bomb hits the grounds of the courtroom people. Mr. Miles wasn't single while he was kicking things with Ms. White. Trust me, you didn't hear wrong. He was engaged and still went on the fool around. Looks like the results of this case need to work in his favor, or he might just not get married. And to the shock of everyone, his fiancée was actually in the courtroom, and she was definitely not happy with the whole situation.
Well, it's hard. It's hurtful. She's a homewrecker.
I could never be a homewrecker when your home was already wrecked.
About me.
Your home was already wrecked.
But you knew about me.
He was buying my ice cream, though.
You knew about me.
No, I did not.
You knew about me.
No, I did not. No, nothing about you. He just said that wasn't together.
If you want to disrespect yourself, that's one thing.
No,
I didn't disrespect another woman.
The tension was palpable, but no worries cause the moment of truth was here. Time to spill the beans on whether this relationship had a future or not. All eyes were on the judge as she got ready to give the final verdict. Cue the mic drop.
The case of White versus Flowers. When it comes to 4-month-old Major White, his father is Mr. Flowers.
Thank you, Jesus. I already knew that.
Ms. Whitfield and Mr. Miles, I know you are relieved.